Welcome to Love to See It, a podcast about tell-all bachelor memoirs.
Gerry Turner is full of bitterness, but also love and also excitement about selfies. And he wants you to know about all of it.
Men contain multitudes. This week, we're talking about Gary's new memoir, Golden Years: What I've Learned from Love, Loss, and Reality TV, which is out today, I believe, when this episode comes out.
November 4th, baby. Just a warning to everyone listening and watching this. I am struggling with a bit of a cold today, so if I have to pause and sneeze and blow my nose, I am so sorry.
But we battle on. And I'm excited. I love when we get to do book club.
Me
But
too.
before we dive in, if you missed our Love is Blind season 9 reunion recap, make sure to scroll back and check that out. Over on Rich Text, we recently released an episode about season 9 of Selling Sunset. And you can find that episode and more over at claireandemma.substack.com. So let's
Let's
get
dive
into it.
in.
So the book, as we mentioned, is Golden Years: What I've Learned from Love, Loss, and Reality TV. It was published by Grand Central Publishing this week. And it is the first Golden Bachelor memoir.
And he did a quick turnaround on this. I'm impressed.
And yet somehow it's so out of date. I'm like, how did you turn this around so quickly? And yet you already have a whole entire fiance that could not be included in the book.
I really feel that they should have been able to include like an epilogue or a bonus
Right.
chapter or something.
Especially because, as we'll discuss, her existence kind of reframes several of the claims he makes repeatedly throughout the book. But the vibes of this book are pretty standard issue reality star memoir. It's like bland, explanatory prose with occasional jokes that are mostly like ham-fisted attempts to use phrases that are memes. And then he'll be like, as the kids say. I'm like, yeah, this is very, very boilerplate, like reality
Yeah.
star trying to cash in with a memoir.
Here's the thing. We're not really here for the quality of the writing.
No, and I'm reminded of that every time I read like a celebrity TV, like a reality TV celebrity memoirs. I'm like, I'm just not here for the writing. This particular one is also, like many dating reality TV stars' memoirs, full of anger and contempt toward his ex.
So much.
He's also kind of prone to like meandering digressions and flash forwards and flashbacks. Like, I feel like they got a little too fancy with the timeline.
I know. I'm like, guys, please just go in chronological order because the skill just isn't there
Yeah.
to jump around.
Right. Like the book opens with him kind of explaining how he first started watching The Bachelor with his daughters during the pandemic. And then they suggested that he apply. Somehow, then later, we're flashing back to a previous application that he had forgotten about. Or was this the previous application? And if so, then how could the pandemic have been the thing that put production on pause? I just got very confused by the different walkthroughs of the application process. And some of that's probably on me because maybe I wasn't paying close enough attention to the timeline. But it just seemed like there wasn't a firm enough grip on the details here. Or he'll randomly be like, "Oh, it was so nice to see my man crush, Jesse Palmer, again. I remember once many months before when we were filming together and something funny happened."
Oh, yeah, that's
Anyway.
frequent. That's very frequent. I was like, wow, Gerry doesn't love anyone more than he loves Jesse Palmer. Is his favorite person from the entirety of the Bachelor franchise.
It's his man crush, as he says many times.
Repeatedly.
He just wants to be just like Jesse. And meanwhile, his confidant is Carrie Fettman. So we look at the world of the show and we're like, Jesse Palmer is the lead's confidant and Carrie Fettman doesn't even exist on screen. But in reality, Carrie Fettman was the person talking Gerry through all of his emotional turmoil. And then he would just go to Jesse Palmer to sort of be starstruck and be like, I want to be like this guy one day. This guy's the real star of the show. So let's get into the content of the book. His
Yes.
first love story and marriage and his experience on The Bachelor are kind of the subject matter. Like, there's a
Yeah.
little bit about his childhood and about his business career, but this is sort of like a romantic relationship memoir.
Which makes sense because what else is the public interested in about
Right.
Gerry?
He is a romantic professional now. Like, that is his area of expertise and special interest. So people want to know about his relationship with Toni. And he writes about Toni, his first wife, very lovingly. We've heard some of the story before, but I actually kind of enjoyed hearing more about it. They fell in
Yeah.
love as high schoolers. He writes about how they got married very quickly after just like a year or so of dating when he had started college and working over the protests of specifically his mother. And he also describes his mom as kind of a troubled person, unstable, prone to alcoholism. And so, not someone that he necessarily took guidance from, but she did sort of make it hard for them initially.
Yeah. There are also are some very sweet old photos at the end of the book, including like his prom photos with Tony and like that those glimpses were very sweet.
Yeah. And we get sort of a glimpse of, like, what this meant for his family life too, that, like, he was the oldest of 4, but his mom wasn't the most reliable presence, so he felt that he had to do a lot of caretaking for his siblings. But he had a really good relationship with his dad, who worked as a baker, um, and they remained close throughout his life, but he was just working all the time, so he wasn't as present. Gary went on to sort of replicate this, it seems like, became a bit of a workaholic. And because he says they started out with almost nothing. So they worked very hard for a long time. He was working very long hours, 7 days a week to grow his Mr. Quick businesses, this like burger franchise that
Yes.
it sounds like he worked there on like cashier to management track employee
And then
until
ended up doing franchising, right?
right. Well, it seems like the way he frames it is like the franchise owners panicked because there was a blizzard that was going to somehow put the franchises out of business. I did not realize a blizzard could have such long lingering effects on a hamburger franchise, but this is why I'm not in business. And he saw his opportunity and offered them a buyout deal. Ended up running these Mr. Quicks for years, then sold them because McDonald's was taking over.
Of course.
And you don't hear about Mr. Quick much these days. And then he went into sort of more of an executive track in like food distribution industry. And meanwhile, Toni was the stay-at-home mom extraordinaire, doing all the parenting, and also ended up working in a medical coding job to save money, even though what she wanted to do was floral arrangement,
Oh,
like every good rom-com heroine. Because he really wanted them to save for like a beautiful lakefront retirement. And he says Tony always wanted to live for today, and he was the one who was like, "No, we have to save so we can have this wonderful retirement." But instead of, as we know, of course, Tony got sick and ended up dying just
basically
weeks
right
after.
after. Yeah.
Yeah, they moved into their retirement home. And he also talks a little bit about his post-retirement work. Um,
Yeah, because he retired fairly early
yeah, he
in his
retired in his
50s.
50s, and but he was like, "I retired, but I had too much energy." When boomers talk about this sort of thing, I'm like, "I wish that I could imagine retiring because it was just time and I had enough money in my 50s, but I still wanna work." Like, that's not something that my generation, I think, conceives of.
There's not gonna be an option for the vast
Yeah.
majority of us to retire in our 50s. We would just run out of money.
I think that's sort of just like a silent generation to boomer generation experience in terms of world history, you know?
Yeah.
Like, that's a very unique experience for a generation to be like, "I'm 55 and it's time to retire. How will I use my abundant remaining energy?" And what he does is he decides to become a mediator. He trains in, like, court mediation basic or, like, non-court mediation, working through, like, the kind of disputes that get sent, to mediation so that they can be handled outside of, like, a judicial, or jury situation.
This actually made a lot of sense to me. I feel like this was some genuinely good insight into Gerry. We've been talking
Yeah.
so much about the way that Gerry had an ability to listen and respond to the women on his season, and just like the way that that's been so contrasted for us with Mel.
Yeah.
And I feel like the mediator stuff does explain some of it.
I was thinking they should send Mel to train as a
I
mediator.
agree. I think maybe every man needs to be sent to be a mediator.
Ironically, Mel actually already works in the legal profession, but maybe mediation specifically would be helpful. Another like theme of the book is that he's clearly pretty irritated by many of the news reports that came out during his tenure, and
Gerry
he
is
wants to
someone
finally push back. He's like, "I'm ready to say my piece."
Gerry is someone who loves being famous but
Yeah.
hates being famous. Which I
Yeah.
get. Like fame that's the
Same.
thing. That's the thing about fame. You get a lot of perks, and also it's a huge invasion of privacy. You are probably going to end up in situations where you are deeply misunderstood, and Gerry doesn't really seem equipped to weather this. He's like, "Everyone tells me just like move it along." And he sort of does, but then he's like, "Now I have this book."
Right. Well, he didn't respond to these reports in the moment, right? That was the advice. It's only going to extend the conversation around these things. You're only going to look defensive. It's not going to help you.
He's like,
And
"So I'm
so
gonna do that
he's
now.
going to do
I'm
it
gonna
now.
extend the conversation and look defensive now."
He seems particularly irritated by this big piece. I think it was a Hollywood Reporter piece, if I'm remembering correctly, um, called The Golden Bachelor's Not So Golden Past, that
Yeah.
kind of dug into some of the less well-known parts of his past. He had said that he hadn't really dated after Tony's death, but they spoke to women that he had dated since Tony's death, including a woman that he had moved in with, or that he had moved into his home before the relationship ended. So not exactly a casual relationship, one might say. It also kind of questioned his um, financial success, suggesting that he actually worked as a janitor and was not this sort of like high flying restaurateur as had been put forward by the franchise, by the Bachelor franchise. And he's very, very, very irritated by this, especially. He's sort of like, fair play. I should have said that I had dated. I just didn't think any of those relationships really matched what I had with Tony. And so they didn't seem that
Right.
important. But I am not poor.
Oh, he makes that very clear.
He's like, listen, I might be from the Midwest, but I'm rich for the Midwest. Okay. I'm doing just fine.
I mean, everything we've heard, he is in fact rich.
Yeah, no, and the thing is that I do believe this.
Yeah.
To be fair, his basically what he contends is that he wasn't a janitor out of financial need. Like just because they found out that he had this odd job handyman role doesn't mean that he was doing that to survive. He's like, oh, Tony always gave back so much to the community, and I was focused on my work, but I wanted to honor her legacy by doing more for the world around me by working this sort of handyman job, not for really, and he was like, it barely paid for my gas, what I made from this job, which it's sort of an interesting choice of things to do. It's like it was a job. It wasn't like a volunteer position, but he's like,
Yeah.
that was me giving back. I was only getting paid a little bit. So community service. And that seems to be like, I mean, he has a lake house. Like doesn't seem to be too
The man
financially
is
strapped.
wealthy. Let's just he is.
Yeah, so he wants that to be very clear. He's like, "That was actually me being a really good person and not, needing
Not a
money,
poor person,
not a
which
poor
would be
person."
disgusting.
I mean, I understand, like, if you've worked very hard your whole life to kind of pull yourself up from very humble
Yeah.
beginnings, it must be frustrating to have anything you do that isn't for a great profit be treated as evidence that you actually
Are a fraud.
are a fraud.
No, and here's the thing. I think that being misunderstood in the public eye would be one of the most frustrating things ever. Like, we get
Yeah.
frustrated if someone misunderstands a joke we made, right? And
Oh,
that's on such
yeah.
a small scale. So I do have a lot of empathy for Gary's position here.
It's just
It's
the
just
thing.
like litigating these things over and over
Yeah.
again. It just doesn't really, it doesn't have the intended effect, unfortunately.
Yeah. He also was annoyed by many other rumors that swirled. People said that he was maybe an alcoholic because the drink he was handed night one looked like orange juice. He's like, it was a screwdriver. There was absolutely alcohol in that drink. And then he tells a very long story about how he couldn't have a vodka cranberry because of his new tooth implants. And so he had to have a less stain-inducing juice as his mixer, and therefore he had the screwdriver, and it was not orange juice.
And he is not an alcoholic.
He's
So
not an alcoholic.
fair enough. I was like, does orange juice not stain? Okay, whatever. I
Well,
guess
cranberry juice is darker, I
yeah.
guess.
No,
I don't
cranberry juice
know.
is definitely worse.
I'm not a celebrity cosmetic dentist, so what do I know? I'm sure that the cosmetic dentist would have really preferred, like, a vodka tonic or something, but
Although I guess that's a lot of acidity on the teeth too.
so is orange juice.
Yeah, I
See,
don't
now we're
know.
getting into the weeds on the mixers too, and it's Gary's fault. He also was annoyed by rumors that he wore a toupee and that he got cosmetic surgery, which he insists he did not.
No, just the tooth implants.
Yeah. Just putting all of that on the record. It was interesting to get a little glimpse of how, like, The Bachelor kind of swept him up, and they were like, "You're getting new teeth." And I'm sure that happens a lot.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Especially with him because he had never been on TV before. Some people do it themselves before they're even a contestant, but if you make it to be the lead, they wanna make sure that you're all shined up.
Honestly, if a network wanted to pay for my new teeth, I'd be like, please go forth.
100%.
It's free. Thank you.
Yeah. So we're going to take a quick break. When we get back, we'll get into Gary's thoughts on that whole process of applying to be the Golden Bachelor and all the women that he met at the Bachelor Mansion.
And we are back. So, as he has said publicly before, he applied to be on The Golden Bachelor after his daughters urged him to. They were fans of the franchise. And also, as we've alluded to, it's very clear that Gary is into the attention that came with being the Golden Bachelor. And I can't fault him for it. He writes frequently throughout the book about how it's such a rush to get recognized, how he always says yes to a photo. He references his like Indiana fan base, the thrill of seeing a billboard of himself. Like, there are a lot of
Yeah.
descriptions of the perks of fame in this memoir.
Yeah, he I think he said he was, like, on the phone with Carrie Fettman when or someone when he saw this billboard near his home in Indiana featuring himself. I mean, it's the Golden Bachelor poster, and he has to, like, hang up. He's like, "My stomach was in my throat." He says, "Imagine it's like holding a winning lottery ticket for months, believing it's just like every losing ticket you've ever purchased, only to discover the day before it expires that it's worth $1,000,000." I don't really know, like, I don't really know how this applies to being the Golden Bachelor, which he had filmed already at this point. Like, he had to know that it was a big deal. But I guess
Yeah.
just the sudden excitement of the feeling felt like this very specific lottery winning scenario.
Yeah, and I think that also they were so unsure of how the show was going to do. He writes a lot about the fact
Mm,
that like his season was actually a hit. The ratings were great.
yeah.
He did that.
Yeah, he did that. He is beloved, he's popular. He talks about, like, how he kept seeing more and more signs of celebrity status, and, like, he loves it, and the thing that I did just start to wonder about was, like, he's not a young guy, you know? Was there no part of him that was like, all of the good parts of this fame and attention might come with some not so good parts of fame and attention? He just seems so into the fame.
Naive. And so naive to what the other side of it is. Like, he's still so angry about, again,
Yeah,
all the ways in which he's misunderstood. And it's like, he hasn't quite married the fact that the billboard comes with the media reports, right? Like,
right.
those are part and parcel.
Right, which is why, like, I find it hard to relate because as we sometimes discuss, like, I get very stressed out about people listening to the podcast and liking it because 'cause I'm like, that comes along with people listening and being very angry at me, you know? It's almost like, I do know that those go together, and it seems like
Right.
he doesn't.
No, I feel like he is learning in real time. And maybe part of that is just like being part of a generation that wasn't on social media. I wonder
Mm.
if it like allowed him to sort of be ignorant to that. Like,
Maybe, yeah,
I
or
don't
maybe he
know.
thought that, like, he was I do think that there was, to be fair, a good part of Golden Bachelor discourse initially that was just like, finally, a purely wholesome reality show where no one will ever be a bad guy, and, like,
Yeah.
these are just nice, sweet, older people who wanna find love, and maybe that created an additional aura of just, like, positivity that's like, this is just gonna be the good kind. This is like starring on a reality show that's about puppies having little football matches together. No one's ever gonna be mad at it. It's just a good thing. And it's like, "Oh, no, the expose dropped about how we make the puppies wear the helmets and they don't like it," you know? Like, unfortunately, the negative attention does come. But he's still manages to seemingly, like, until things get really, really bad, compartmentalize enough to just fully enjoy the perks, like,
Yeah.
to
Which
just
I love that for him.
yeah, he's like, "I love any opportunity to share the enjoyment and excitement of the show. I never say no to a photo." And he writes about his visit to Kris Jenner's house, which we know about because it was filmed for the Kardashians. I enjoyed this because he basically is like, she was just being so extra when we were on camera, but then she, like, pulled me out to the kitchen and basically asked me when I knew it was the right time to get hearing aids.
Yeah.
Like, she just wanted to talk about the aging process, and then once it was on camera, it was all, like, glamour and drama. And I was like, "Yeah, she's a show woman.
I
She
mean, yeah, she
knows."
has a job.
And he's like, "I didn't even know they were that famous. I thought they were, like, drafting off of our fame."
Gary.
Gary.
Gary, please.
He also writes about the process of, like, deciding what he was going to look like on the show and
Again,
the
something that has
styling.
come up in our discussions of Mel's fashion.
Yeah, and he has a seems like a very specific, um, and different viewpoint on fashion, and so he writes, that Carrie tried to offer him a black suit, and he was just like, "Absolutely not." He says, "When you get to a certain age, black is no longer cool, it's sad. I wanted edgy suits, ones that would make people say to themselves, 'Ooh, I'm not sure I like that choice of color, but okay, let's go with it.' Simply put, I wanted to dress 30 years younger than I was, and that's how I ended up dressing on the show. I may not have known anything about fashion, but I was a salesman by trade, and in this case, I was the product."
And honestly, it turned out pretty great.
Honestly, I this seems pretty savvy to me. Like,
Yeah.
I do think that you can wear a black suit at any age, but I do think it's also true that, like, you can get away with a much bolder look as an older man, and it looks more like people are more, like, excited to see you showing interest in fashion and not being drab, and, like, he really leaned into that,
And
and
it
had a yeah,
worked.
he had a good wardrobe. Some people should take notes,
Mel.
Mel. Um, so should we talk about his thoughts on the women?
I mean, yeah, because that's what I was really here
Yeah.
for. That's why I read this memoir. So he talks about quite a few of the women on his season. And on the whole, I'd say he has like a very fond outlook on the vast majority of them.
Yeah. It's almost funny because he keeps writing about how, like, these 22 wonderful wonderful women and everything they did for me, but also half of the book is about how much Theresa sucks. And I'm like, okay, so 21 wonderful women
Yeah. No, they
and
were all wonderful except for Theresa, who he's very bitter towards.
so bitter still. Um, but yeah, he writes about Nancy that he was intimidated by the fact that Nancy's late husband was a big attorney and she was a very successful interior designer. He says he felt like he was too much of a Midwestern hick for her. And he says he regretted not getting to know her as well as he could have. But he later like initiated a friendship with her and he writes that she's, quote, a wonderfully big-hearted woman.
Yeah, he's basically like someone's gonna be very lucky to be with her.
Yeah. There are all of these women that it seems like he became closer with after the show, according to Gary, that, like, are his friends now, especially Kathy and Susan. He's
Oh
always
yeah.
bringing up, like, you know, "Kathy I thought was too much of a pot stirrer, too harsh, but now I know that she's wonderful, and I just love Kathy and everything she says I should have listened to."
Yeah, also it seems like his daughters have become close with
Yeah.
Kathy and Susan, and they like spent a holiday at Susan's with a few of the other women, like drinking a bunch of wine. Like he loves Kathy and Susan. And he's
Yeah.
yeah, and he's like, you know, Kathy was right about Teresa, basically.
Yeah, in so many words. It's to the point that there are some things that he reveals that several women told him, but he doesn't wanna name because it's sensitive things that he is sharing. And I'm like, "It sounds like it was Kathy and Susan," because 'cause I'm like, they're the names who are always popping up as people that he trusts now, and he wishes he had listened to them. But so Nancy is someone that he feels like he kind of missed the boat with. Another one is Joan, but, of course, Joan was ripped away from him by her selfish daughter who had a problematic, childbirth, and
Gary, of course, does not say it was selfish. He's very much like,
no,
of
I'm just
course, I
making fun of the
respect.
fan base, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's like, "I think that Joan could have been the one." I
And I
really
think
felt
we
strongly
all
for her.
kind of
Mhm.
saw that.
Yeah, and do you remember when he visited her season to offer advice, and you kinda caught the vibe that he sort of wanted her to be like, "Yeah, there's some great guys here, but Gary, I keep thinking about you and me," and then she doesn't say that, and
Yes.
he's kinda sad.
He says to her, I believe, "Have you considered that your guy isn't here?"
Maybe he isn't here in the
He's
mansion, but maybe
here.
he's here sitting right in front of you, right underneath your nose. And he does write in the book that that is basically true, that
Yeah.
he wished for another chance with her, and so leaving without being, like, invited to stay was sort of his moment to be like one of the women from the mansion, kind of driving away rejected. I'm like, "Yeah, you gotta into each life, one limo exit must fall." I also think it's notable that his current fiancée probably resembles Joan more than, like, any of the other ladies, especially the front runners, like the
Yes.
ones you might remember. So, yeah, a little bit of that there. Um, about Faith, Gary offers 3 main reasons that he never got all the way there to, like, seeing a future together, which are pretty much all completely unbelievable. Like, I was like, "What are you talking about?" She was too beautiful was the first one, and he tried to explain this, and it just I couldn't make it make sense. He was like, "You know when someone's, like, so beautiful that you're kind of like, I shouldn't think about how beautiful they are, and it makes you keep them at arm's length because you're afraid of their beauty?" And I'm like, "No,
No,
I
I don't
don't."
relate.
Also, like, Leslie and Teresa and Joan
Are all
are
very
also
beautiful.
beautiful. So I I specifically in this case don't understand because it seems like you weren't having that problem with your other beautiful finalists. And he also writes about how she was very settled on her farm with her horses, which
That
we know,
that's like the
sure.
only reason that he gives that made sense to me, which is also what I think we saw when he was on the show. Like that was our
That was
assumption.
I think that was most viewers' assumption that that
Yeah.
was kind of the problem. Um But he says the real sticking point was the age difference. He feels that Faith was too young. I think she was, like, 60 at the time, and he was, like, 71 or 72, and so they're, like, 11 years apart. Leslie was just a couple years older than Faith, but age didn't come up with her at all, and he's like, "She was just too young." Like, I knew that I would be 80 and less robust before long, and fun-monger Faith would still be raring to go. She would be mongering that fun, and he would be unable to monger with her.
I'm gonna say that this should be noted for later when we get to
Yeah.
his fiance.
Put a giant red pin in that one. He's like, "Oh, I just wanted not everyone wants a younger woman. I wanted someone who understood my references, you know, someone who really, like, would be on the same wavelength as me. I couldn't date someone who was more than 7 years younger than me." Okay, Gary. Then we get to Leslie, and
And there is a
this
lot about Leslie
there's a
in
lot
this
about
memoir.
Leslie. There's a lot. I would feel very weird reading this if I were Leslie,
Yeah.
to be honest. It's all like pretty positive, but then but also some very hurtful things that are not presented in a way that is like intended to be hurtful. Like he clearly feels a lot of regret about how he handled things with Leslie and certain decisions that he made. But he does also admit to some judgments that he made that would really be gut punches for me to hear about, to hear confirmed.
Yes. He admits that he dumped Leslie in large part because of her history of divorce,
Yeah.
which I think we posited at the time.
And I remember hearing this also from especially older listeners that, like, he probably wants to marry Theresa because she has had a successful marriage, and that signals that they can replicate that success. Leslie seems risky because she hasn't had a successful marriage. And I don't think we wanted to believe that, right? But, like,
He admits it here. He writes,
yeah.
"The real red flag for me was her romantic history. I did not judge her for the fact that she had been divorced twice. I mean, he did. But it was so completely the opposite of my experience with Toni. Don't get me wrong, we had our challenges. You can't be married that long and not have some bumps. Splitting up, however, was never something either of us contemplated. We were in it together forever. I worried that Leslie's explanations of her history indicated fundamental differences in our definitions of commitment that would prove problematic down the line. No matter how much I invested in her, I reasoned, I would always doubt that she was fully invested in me. Today, I look back and think this was a Gerry problem of confidence, not a Leslie problem of commitment." So I am glad that and he does repeat this multiple times, that he like feels regret for the ways in which he judged her, but he did judge her.
And I mean, of course he feels regret because he went on to be married for like 3 months.
Yeah.
So how could he sit here in judgment of someone who spent years in marriages that she talked openly about how toxic and bad they were for
Right.
her, spent years in them, raising kids in them, and ultimately left them, and he couldn't sit there and say, "And I was right," when he went on to have a 3-year marriage.
3 months.
Oh, sorry, a 3-month marriage with his winner. I mean, that would just be absurd. Like, all you can do is admit that you were wrong because he
Yeah.
was clearly wrong that he has this sort of magical capacity for commitment that can overcome compatibility and dysfunction. And when you see him write about his marriage with Toni, sure, he's like, "Yeah, we had hard times." But he also writes so much about how they just understood each other's needs without even saying anything.
They
Do you know
were
how rare
deeply
that is?
compatible.
They were so compatible, and they got married because they felt just this deep desire to be together all the time. And what he took away from this experience, apparently, is I'm uniquely good at commitment, and I should marry someone else who's uniquely good at commitment, and that will just, like, make it all work.
Sorry, bud. A lot of that is just luck.
Yeah,
Like, do you happen to grow together with the person that you married? Oh, you
right.
do? Great. Good for you. It's not an innate
Or it's like
ability to be good at marriage.
Or it's like actually picking the right person. Like maybe you and Toni would have gotten divorced if she hadn't been such an incredible, supportive, fun, wonderful partner that you loved being
Right.
with. Like maybe you wouldn't have been so good at commitment if that hadn't
And a
been the
lot of that is
case.
just not necessarily predictable when you enter into a relationship.
Yeah. Especially if you just like jump right into it and get married
Right.
immediately after people learn about your relationship publicly. So Gary writes that their fantasy suite date, as we saw, was incredible. Like the day and evening portion that we saw was incredible. They went like rappelling, remember, and they were able to like really support each other, and they had such a great time together. But then the overnight part was not good. And he says, quote, "Not because my back gave out. I had pre-gamed with ibuprofen. Thank you, Gary. Um, I was so worried." But he basically says that while they were talking, he became concerned that the details that they were discussing of their future lives just didn't make sense together. She revealed that she wouldn't really be able to afford all of the travel he wanted to do, but she also couldn't just let him kind of take care of it because she does make good money as a dance instructor and a trainer. So she needed to kind of just stay in Minneapolis to see her clients. She wasn't really in a position to either retire and travel on her own savings or just sort of pick up and be flexible with Gary's desire to travel. And that gave him a lot of pause, he
Yeah,
says.
what he was looking for more than anything, it seems, was a flexibility of time.
What he was looking for was a 71-year-old woman
Who was
who
independently
was
wealthy.
independently wealthy, retired, loves travel, and had been married for many years until her tragic widowhood. And fortunately, one of those women still seemed to be in the race. Gary also says that what he was alarmed when Leslie met his daughters, because Jenny asked if she was ready to be in a committed relationship. And instead of sort of directly answering that, Leslie told Jenny that earlier in the week she had, quote, broken down in tears after being asked the same question. And neither Jenny nor Gary followed up on where this response or this emotion came from at all, apparently.
Right. This was so odd to me.
Because to me, my immediate reaction is she's feeling kind of probably singled out and stressed and judged by the idea that she is not seen as ready for this because of her difficult relationship history. Like there's probably a lot of sense of failure, fair or not, or judgment bound up in the sense that people are looking at her and saying, like, well, you've had two marriages that ended in divorce. Are you really going to be capable of commitment? That can come with a lot of
Emotion.
emotion. And
Especially because it was pretty clear to anyone watching the show that Leslie was deeply ready for commitment. Like, that's fully why she was there.
and really worried about being judged as not being capable of it because of her romantic past. And so the fact that neither Jenny nor Gary followed up on this and like asked her, like, why did you react this way? Like, can we talk it through? That was surprising to me that he just took that as a black mark, essentially. He also kind of implies that it showed poor judgment for Leslie to say this
Yes.
to Jenny. He's like, not only was Leslie having a negative reaction to the prospect of like a committed relationship, but she also thought it was a good idea to divulge it to my daughter. And I was like, no, it seems like she's having a negative reaction to being repeatedly asked if she can handle commitment.
Right. Uh, okay, sir.
Okay. He says that their hometown also had kind of fallen flat and he had struggled to connect easily with her family, whereas he felt immediately connected and at home with Faith's and Teresa's families. And I thought this was interesting. It seems like a large part of this was also because of the setting. Like he met her family at a restaurant, I think. It was a little more of like a formal setting. And with Faith and Teresa, he met them in family homes. I think,
Yeah, and he was more comfortable in those settings.
yeah, he says it like reminded them of his routines with his family by seeing their family routines, and everyone just felt more at ease. And so you have to think that even just the selection of the venue might have played a role there because he wasn't getting to see Leslie's family in any sort of family routine at home.
But this just seems to have, like, piled up for him, and he was like, "Okay,
Yeah.
Leslie just isn't a good fit for me."
Yeah. But he's like, we had such a great shared sense of humor. We had such a strong connection that I kept being pulled toward her despite the fact that kind of my logical side was saying it wasn't right. And this is what happens whenever a man chooses a woman that he feels like is a logical choice for him over the woman he feels drawn to. It's a disaster. Don't
It's
do
so
it.
true. It's
At least
so true. I
take a
mean, he
chance.
multiple times refers to Theresa as, like, the logical, practical, safe pick, and Leslie as the risk.
Yeah. Love is a risk. You got to take it. You'll always end up regretting not going for it if bachelor history is anything to go by. So the horrible breakup happens after their last chance date, and I think we can all remember this horrible breakup.
Oh, yeah.
The vibe is just gone. She can tell something is off. As he's leaving, she's like, "Do you have something to tell me?" And he doesn't tell her. But he's already kind of decided in his mind that it's over. She says, "I love you," and he doesn't respond. So he says
Ugh.
goodbye, and she's already in tears. On the show, we see him leave and then come back. But what we don't see, I think, is that apparently he was actually outside of her room for like
An
1 to 2
hour.
or more. Like the timeline is a little unclear. He's like, "I spent an hour doing this and then an hour doing that." And I'm like, "Or were those combined an hour?"
Yeah,
I
no, it
don't
was a
know.
little unclear, but it was a very long time. What's clear is that it was
Yeah.
a very long time, and they were both just individually crying before
Yeah.
the breakup for a very long time.
He says basically that he was not in so many words, but he pulled a full Mesnick. He was leaning over a balcony railing and crying in the hallway. If you're ever pulling a full Mesnick, get in the car, turn right around. You should not be sending this woman home. You're gonna regret it. He says he went downstairs for a while and sat in a golf cart. Jesse Palmer tried to give him a pep talk. He went up and down the stairs for a long time, trying to decide whether to go back and talk to her or not. And finally, he's like, "I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it now." So he goes back and knocks on her door, and they have that gut wrenching breakup conversation that we all saw. And then he has the audacity to write this quote, "While Leslie got to hole up with room service or drown her sorrows in the hot tub, I had to pivot from a depressing, soul crushing night to what was supposed to be one of the happiest days of my life."
Gary, no. Gary,
Gar-
no. It's
Gar-
not better to be the person who got dumped. No, 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 no.
I had to go to my other hot girlfriend.
And
It's not
propose.
fair. Gary, no one feels sorry for you about this.
Yes, I imagine that being in this position is very difficult. It is difficult to be the lead. It sucks to hurt someone. It sucks more to be the person who doesn't get to make that choice.
Right. And this is like the pitfall that can come, as we know, from the lead having never been a finalist. And in fact, he was never on the show at all. Because this was, I mean, how could he? This was the first time that they had done this. But he actually didn't know how much it would suck to get dumped by the person you thought you were going to spend the rest of your life with on camera while they go off to propose to your friend.
Right. He
You don't
he
know.
hasn't experienced that.
So it takes some kind of nerve to write this out in a way that makes it seem like you are the one more deserving of pity. I would pity you more if you could have the integrity and the strength to be like, "I had it easier here. I had another relationship to go to that I saw a future with, and Leslie had just had her last good hope of that in many years ripped away."
Also, like, I'm sorry. Have you experienced a breakup, Gary? You
Actually,
think you're
I don't.
I don't know that he has. I don't think he's been dumped, like, ever. I'm like, you
Ugh.
you think you're just like, well, time to cozy up with a great movie and a pile of room service pancakes. No, you feel nauseous.
I mean, think about, you know
You
what?
can't even eat. You can't even enjoy room service. You can't enjoy the goddamn hot tub. What are you talking about?
I know. I'm not like, "Oh, thank God. Now I get to have room service." I'm so glad I'm not going off to my other partner to plan our life together. But let's talk about what he has to say about Theresa.
Because it's a lot.
It's a lot. This
Should
is
we
gonna
take a
be
quick
a
break
lot.
before?
Yeah, let's take a quick
Yeah.
break and then we will get back with all of Gary's many thoughts on Theresa before, during, and after their marriage.
And we are back. So let's get into what the bulk of this book honestly is about. And it's about Theresa.
It's about how Theresa sucks. Theresa betrayed him. Theresa broke his heart.
Theresa
Theresa
manipulated
manipulated
him. And
him.
Theresa wasn't even on his radar until about halfway through the show or more. He says
Yeah.
like Theresa was not a front runner until Hometowns, essentially. Like he liked her, but she was not in his mind in his top two. That was really Faith and Leslie. He says that getting down to the final three, he wasn't sure whether Theresa or Ellen was going to make it through to Hometowns.
Yeah, and it makes sense because we had seen him say "I love you" to Faith and Leslie before we ever saw him say that to Theresa. So, throughout his reflections on his time with Theresa during the show, he really heavily implies that she was very calculated, strategic, and manipulating him the whole time.
What's funny is that all of his evidence of this is just like the things we saw on the show and
Well,
the narrative that was on the show.
I think a lot of this is just him watching the show back once he had already made a decision and being like, "Wait, if I had seen all this, I would have seen her differently," which
Yes.
I remember also from, like, Ben Flajnik and the post-show airing period of his thoughts on Courtney Robertson, like, she went from being kind of his dream girl to him being like, "Oh, if I had seen how she was in the mansion, I wouldn't have even liked her." It's always a tough look. I'm like, "You
Yes.
picked her." Like, I don't know, stand by
Especially,
her.
right, stand by her, especially because like it's convenient to have this narrative now that the relationship didn't work out.
Yeah. It's just always a bummer to see, like, the show constructs this narrative so that they can have drama and a villain, and then the lead picks them anyway, and they just tumble right into consuming the narrative that the show has created to feed to the audience to create drama in the season, and it undermines their perception of their partner.
Right. It's also just funny because I'm like, I don't think any of the women have any ill will towards Theresa anymore.
Well, Gary would imply otherwise quite heavily. He says that at the time of the show, he thought that Theresa was, quote, innocently trying to be a good companion, manipulated by the others to overshare. Naturally talkative, she can really put words together. Turns out I was the easiest one to manipulate. So he kind of now has the sense that when Theresa was seen as talking too much about his relationship with her in the mansion, she was quite intentionally being manipulative
Yeah. He
and trying to
comes down
scare the
on the
other women
side of
off.
Kathy. He's like, she should have zipped it.
Yeah. In fact, he says that he would have said "zip it" to Theresa himself if he had been there.
Yeah. He even makes claims like that Theresa told the other women that Gary only liked petite brunettes,
Mm.
which unclear again what source that came from.
Clearly he doesn't. He likes petite blondes as well. Also, isn't Kathy a petite brunette? I'm like, there are a lot of petite brunettes on the show. Yeah, like he says that basically she made such a, and this is what Kathy said at the time as well. Like she made it seem like their relationship was so strong that no one else
Had a chance.
had a chance. And he gets kind of upset about this in retrospect. But the fact is, I don't think we saw any of the other women retreat because of this or pull back. Like Kathy ended up in conflict with her and he did take Teresa's side and he sent Kathy home. But I don't think that we saw the women kind of make way for Theresa. So ultimately, he did pick her. So maybe their
Right.
relationship was the strongest. Like,
I know. I
it's
just
not
feel like
because
he
they all
has
ran away scared of Theresa. They
like
were all there fighting.
here's the thing. We had criticisms ourselves of some of Teresa's behavior on the show.
Yeah.
Sure. But what frustrates me about this read is that it's such like an ungenerous read on the woman that he chose, on the woman that he had a real relationship with.
Yeah.
And it's like odd to me to read so deeply into these things that the show made hay of. He even
Yeah.
brings up the fact that Theresa was reading How to Win the Bachelor. Shout out Lizzie and
Allegedly.
Chad, allegedly.
He's like, "Yeah, several of the women told me that she was reading How to Win the Bachelor on the show." And, quote, "There was something about the image of Teresa curled up on one of the couches planning her strategy to win a rose that made me feel sick to my stomach. It made me think that her goal was never to find the next love of her life. It was to win." I like, maybe she was reading it on the show. Why would you do that? Like, if you're actually scheming to win the show, the
Right,
last
that would
thing you
be a
should do
bad
is
strategy.
bring the book and read it before. Like, maybe take a few crib notes and, like, glue them to the bottom of your suitcase interior or something, but, like, why would you sit around on a couch openly reading it? It just doesn't really pass the sniff test to me. It seems more like the kind of thing where also, but, like, producers typically don't let people bring in outside reading material, but putting that aside, it doesn't even seem that weird for there to be a copy floating around and people looking at it does not necessarily mean that they
Again,
are.
this just like isn't a smoking gun.
He clearly sees it as absolute proof that she never liked him and she was just trying to win.
And my read on their relationship is just that these two were not a good fit. And Gary is very frustrated and bitter about it. And so he's going back and reading the least generous, like putting the least
Yeah.
generous lens on every single thing that happened between them.
And it's very hard to understand and sympathize with him picking her when he's describing that all of their interactions on the show were
Were
just like,
stilted and
s-
calculated. And like he felt that he was, quote, barely scratching the surface. I'm like, if you felt that way, why did you choose her then?
why did you choose her? Like, I truly am still trying to understand. And it seems like most of it comes down to the fact that he thought that she would be available to travel with him a lot.
And that he saw his family in hers. I really
Right.
think the family had a huge piece to play in this.
Which is all lovely, but like, do you wanna spend time with someone's family or travel with them just because they're available or because you really enjoy their company, you
Right.
know? Like, and what ends up happening is that Teresa is both unavailable, and when they are together, he doesn't enjoy her company that much, so you really shot yourself in the foot there, buddy. Teresa obviously gets into play during hometowns with the family coming in, and then during their overnight date, she kind of starts to pull ahead because the off camera time is what ended up convincing him that she was, as Trista told him to find, the woman he couldn't live without. And he describes it this way: "In the first 2 hours of our overnight, I met a Teresa that I had not seen before. In the fantasy suite, she showed me a side that was not for the rest of the world, but for me alone. Her modesty and desire to adhere to conventional standards of behavior, particularly for women of a certain age, fell away. She was strong and happy and animated. I totally fell for her. And at the end of this conversation, many hours into the night, I told her I loved her."
Okay, so seems like you did connect.
I So, call me like, maybe I'm reading too much into this. Do you think he's, like, trying to it seems to me like he's trying to imply that she was, like, horny.
Sexually available.
Right. Like, he was like, suddenly she was no longer modest and trying to adhere to conventional standards of behavior. Like, she was showing me a side that was for me alone. Like, to me, what I'm hearing is that he felt like she was down to clown, and that made him feel, like, a stronger sense of, like, excitement and connection and passion with her,
I think that's certainly part of it.
which then kind of, I think, dovetails with the fact that later he's like, "Why didn't she want to sleep with me anymore?"
Yeah. He
Um,
also, though, was very pleased by the fact that she seemed ready to retire and that according to him, quote, Teresa proclaimed she would quit working if she found the right guy. This was a pivotal moment that shed a whole new light on the situation, although not for the reason people posted on social media. Some Golden Bachelor watchers had a theory that I only got interested in Teresa when I learned she had a good job. On the contrary, her salary was of no concern to me. Her freedom was. He wanted someone who had the ability to just like be out in the world, be retired, not have to worry about money, not have to work.
yeah.
And he thought Teresa was that person.
Again, like, he's really just looking for someone who is available to spend her retirement with him in the way that he has envisioned his retirement without maybe thinking quite enough about whether he would want that person to be the one present for all of those experiences. So he writes that after this horrible breakup with Leslie, he goes to the next step, which is proposal day. And he doesn't have to see Leslie again because he dumped her the night before, but he still, as he waited for Theresa, says he felt empty. And he says, quote, "There was no happiness in the moment."
This is brutal.
No
No
happiness.
happiness? Why did you propose then?
He suggests that maybe this is because Theresa won by default. And who made that decision? Gary? I don't know. Like I found this very frustrating because we are shown this proposal where he made many claims about how happy and excited he was and how she was the only person in his thoughts. And then 2 years later, he's like, "I felt no happiness. All I could think about was Leslie and whether Theresa was just winning because she was the only person left who didn't have like a red flag or an automatic exclusionary factor." That's not the image that is, like, presented to us in this moment,
No, and I guess maybe that's
or to Theresa.
honest, but
Yeah.
that's pretty bleak. And yeah, if I'm Teresa reading this, I'd be like, "Why the fuck did you propose to
Well,
me?"
especially he wrote this whole book being like, I feel betrayed, I feel like she manipulated and lied to me." You stood up there and said all these things proposing to her that apparently you didn't fucking mean. How would you feel if you like, if you heard that Theresa said such a thing? Like, "All those romantic declarations I made, I wasn't feeling them at the time." I don't think that you would give her much grace for that because he gives her very little
He
grace
gives her no grace
throughout the
for like
book.
anything.
Right.
And this continues into his post-show life with Teresa. He basically makes it sound like the fun and intimacy of the relationship basically immediately disappeared and their phone calls were bad and stilted. He writes that, quote, "Teresa came off almost mechanical on the phone as we went through our nightly script of generic mundane questions."
Yeah. He says what he learned about her without the input of facial expressions and body language was superficial at best and artificial at worst. I found conversations with her difficult. Her tone and delivery were the same, whether she was talking about a problem at work or about picking up her morning smoothie. This is a really funny complaint to me. He's like, she didn't vary her tone enough. I wanted a more lively variation in tone. Like, he just doesn't enjoy her personality.
Right, which
He
like
proposes to
you guys just aren't a good fit. And that's okay. It doesn't mean that one person has to be bad,
Yeah.
right? Like you can just not be a good fit with someone. You picked someone who you were fundamentally very incompatible with.
It seems
And
like both of them were having a bad time on these phone calls, so I don't know why you got married right away is a big question that I'm left with that, by the way, is not really answered or even addressed.
I mean, he basically makes it seem as though they got married because he wanted Teresa to have the experience of planning a dream wedding and he felt too guilty to call it off.
But when was it decided that they would do it so quickly at all? That is actually not addressed
You're
at
right.
all.
That is not addressed. He's
Suddenly,
just
they're
suddenly
just wedding
like, they're
planning.
planning a wedding.
Right. Anyway, the wedding was about to happen. What? What I really wanted to hear how much money they were offered to do the wedding, whether that played a factor in how quickly it happened, like how
Right.
he
Did he
worked
feel
through.
swept up in this by the show? It's like
Right.
he's not willing to get into that.
He's describing a relationship that he's basically not enjoying from the minute that they got off the show. So at some point in there, he had to decide to get married on live TV in like 2 months. And he never explains how that came to
Yeah, no,
happen
you're
or what
so right. It's
motivated it.
actually very bizarre. He does, however, describe their first like couples getaway at the
It's
Golden
unclear to me
Bachelor penthouse
what is
overlooking Central Park.
so many things are unclear to me here. It seems, first of all, like maybe this ended up being their only hideaway weekend. He describes it as both their first and then later says that they had like one weekend together before they debuted publicly. So I don't know
Yeah,
if
so I
they ever
guess it
even
was
had
this
another
one.
one. Also, what is a Golden Bachelor penthouse? He just says that as if it's a thing. I didn't know that the Golden Bachelor had a
No,
penthouse.
I'm
Why
like,
would
I
it have
guess
a
ABC
penthouse?
probably just owns this penthouse.
Why wouldn't you say, like, an ABC penthouse or a Warner Bros.
Right.
Penthouse? It's so very bizarre. So they were supposed to be at a secluded house, and, The Bachelor has a lot of experience
Doing
book
these like
doing
happy
these.
couple getaways, but he makes it seem like, or maybe it was like something ended up happening last minute with the
Yeah,
Airbnb they were supposed to stay at, and it wasn't going to be private enough. They were worried about leaks, so instead they transferred them to this penthouse that I guess production or ABC or Hulu owns.
yeah. And Gary complains about basically everything about this weekend except how hot Teresa looked when he first saw her. Very. But the apartment smelled bad. The cleaners were there while they were there, which is weird. So they kept having to move from room to room to talk. He was hungry, and Teresa had only bought salmon, salad greens, and eggs.
I'm like, could you not order delivery? Well, he's opposed to
No.
delivery, actually, is what we
Yeah.
learn. I was like, also, I don't know, order groceries. Like, ask a handler to go to the grocery. Like, you're in New
Right.
York City.
He's like, Teresa was in charge of the grocery list. And I'm like, I think you're going to have to rethink some of these things. It looks like you're the one who really loves cooking. So why aren't you in charge of the grocery list? Or maybe here's an idea. It's something that my husband and I have developed through many years of successful partnership. We talk to each other about what's going to be on the grocery list.
But also, if something is forgotten, you're in New York fucking City.
It's very easy
Like,
to get, I
send
promise.
someone out. Or, I'm sorry, get on Uber Eats and order yourself a goddamn meal you want to eat,
He's like,
Gary.
where were the bagels? I don't know, probably around the corner. Someone can
Right.
get you bagels.
Or again, you can order bagels to be delivered to your door.
Yeah,
I
I don't know. He
No,
described
he like had to starve because he could only eat Teresa's salmon. He's very preoccupied by the fact that she operates on a very strict diet that doesn't really jive with his. Okay, again, that could be an incompatibility, but he makes it seem like, I don't know, like she like snookered him into being on this like
right.
salmon diet.
Well, once they ordered a bunch of room service after the proposal, and that made him think that she would eat things other than salmon. He had already picked her at that point, but putting that aside, that was a betrayal. It turns out that she only eats salmon. It's just kind of weird because you don't get the sense that she and Gary ever really talked about this, or that he was like, I understand that you prefer salmon, but I'm gonna like
I need some
I'm
carbohydrates.
gonna
Can we
order
order
some
that
bagels.
too?
And she was like, "Absolutely not, I can't have that in the house." That isn't something that is made clear she said, so I don't really understand why he's
No,
so
he's like,
grieved
I
by
was
this.
victimized by the fact that the food that she ordered or the food in her personal home was not to my liking. And
He
he's
seems fine with
fundamentally opposed to eating out. So,
Yeah. He seems fine with the fact that she is about as big around as a toothpick, so, that part of it is fine for him, but he's like, "What about cake, though? Why didn't she buy cake just knowing that I would want cake? She should have just done that." He describes this weekend as anything but romantic, then later says that aside from the issues with the apartment itself and Teresa's shopping list, it was romantic and magical. Puppy dogs and roses. They danced in the kitchen, planned the future. They were crazy about each other. I was like,
which
your
one is it?
your descriptions of this weekend are completely at odds with each other. I don't understand.
He also becomes very upset when Teresa reveals that she doesn't want to retire immediately. That she
Yeah.
like actually loves her job and she wants to work for another year.
Yeah.
In my mind, I'm like, a year doesn't seem like that much time.
Well, Gary feels differently. He's like, when you're 71, 72, a year is a long time. You
Fair
know,
enough.
I I asked her to consider 6 months. She reluctantly agreed, but he is also growing resentful because he comes to understand that this continued year or 6 months of work is really for financial reasons above all, and she feels she needs extra savings to meet her retirement goals, and he kind of starts to feel like she misrepresented her level of affluence. He is irritated that she spends her money on things like smoothies and eating out for almost every meal
This made me
when she should
very
be like
uncomfortable.
I was sort of two minds about this. Like, she's a grown woman, like, she has managed her own career and her budget, and she seems to be doing pretty fine, um, and she should be allowed to do that. Also, if you eat out for, like, every meal, that's gonna be, like, several $1,000s a month. That is actually a lot of money that you could be putting away if your goal is to save, and I can see that for him, that's, like, so different from how he manages money.
No, I think for me, it was, again, a sign of their fundamental incompatibility.
Yeah.
And I understand him being frustrated if he feels like the financial situation was misrepresented in some way. I mean, we don't know exactly what was said,
Yeah.
but I wouldn't want to be with someone who was looking at, like, every time I got a smoothie being like, that $12 should have gone into your savings account. Like, if I'm 71 and a man is like, don't get your
Yeah.
daily smoothie, like, it's just that is how she
Yeah.
lives her life. And that is probably, again, more of a reason why they needed to spend more time together to actually
Yeah.
figure out if this relationship would work outside of the show.
But he's like, "Oh, she could skip the smoothies and the
Retire
dinners
now.
out, and she could retire in a few months instead of in a year. Like, she's saving so much slower." So she's not prioritizing joint retirement with me. She's prioritizing this East Coast lifestyle that she's living.
And East Coast mentality, which he
He
defines as it was a given that you would always go to the classiest restaurants, wear expensive clothes, hobnob with the richest and most influential people you could find at any given time, and live in the fanciest house you could afford. That's East Coast mentality
This
and
is funny because
lifestyle.
he loves hobnobbing with rich and influential people. It's one of the major
Yeah,
themes
he's
of the
always like,
book.
oh, you might think my friends are hicks, but they're multimillionaires.
Yeah, and you know what I love is going to LA and doing the press rounds and being a celebrity.
Like,
It's so
again, that's
cool.
fine.
That's fine,
You're
lots of people
allowed.
like that. Um, yeah, no, everyone on the East Coast just, like, spends money like it's water and has designer clothes and eats out for every meal, and everyone in the Midwest is
Is a good
just a
person.
humble, homespun good person. He also does say, like, at one point, she said, "If you pay all of my expenses, I would quit right now," and he hates this. He ends up saying, like, "My disillusionment did not stem from her net worth, but her lack of team spirit." This seems like something I would say if my partner kept pressuring me
To
to
stop
quit my
working.
job
Well,
before I was
exactly.
ready.
That's the thing. I was like, it's not that crazy if you're saying, I need you to have this flexibility and I need you to
Right.
stop saving money. Then I'd be like, okay, are you going to pay for my life? If you have that kind of money, then fine, I will stop working.
Right, like, to me, this is not a smoking gun. I guess there's a scenario where she could have said it in a way that's like, "If you pay all my expenses, I'll quit right now," like, trying to, like, extort something from him that she really wants, but it sounds more to me likely that this came as a pushback on his pressure to leave her job before she felt financially comfortable with her retirement savings. Like, "Hey, I have to take care of my expenses. If you wanna be in charge of how long I work, you can be in charge of my expenses." Oh my god. What a lack of team spirit she just showed by saying that. So he also, like, in addition to this mentality about spending so much money and hobnobbing with rich and influential people, he also feels like her schedule is just really rigid and doesn't have space for him, and one of the things that he really was drawn to about her is that she said for the right guy, she would retire earlier, she would change her lifestyle. But instead, he says, each night she gave me a very specific time to call, and that was it for her availability. Working around her late meals, her exercise regimen, and her bedtime routine, I felt like a low priority. Her schedule was so consistent and absolute that I wondered what it foretold about compromise in other, more important areas. I felt like I was not a priority in her life. I feel like I still haven't seen much in the way of compromises that he made for her.
Right. And here's the thing, I can very much see this being the case, that, like, her
Mm.
lifestyle is very rigid, that again, he didn't see that kind of regimented lifestyle as compatible with the way that he lives his life. But it's not as though he was like, well, I'll move to Jersey and I'll bend to your routine. Like, neither of them wanted to bend to the other, which
That's the
is
thing. If she's still
fair.
working and he's retired, why is he not compromising by during the length of her continued like work, which is only 6 months to a year, moving to be close to her most of the time or visiting her for extended periods? That's not something that seems to really come up as a significant option. He wants to, like, be in Indiana at the lake house, calling her whenever he wants for these terrible phone calls that he hates, but instead she's, like, exercising and eating dinner, which is incredibly selfish, and going to bed. I don't know, I was like, "This is the worst stuff you can pull up," and it just makes me feel like you're both kind of set in your ways, and you have expectations for how you're gonna spend this part of your life,
And they don't match up.
and they don't match.
Right. He also talks about their ill-fated real estate search in
Mm.
Charleston because, of course, that is a place that they talked about. Maybe they could each move to it and get a new place. He said that by his calculations, they couldn't afford anything over $1.5 million. But all of the houses that he found, Theresa found fault with them, like there were not enough trees or something, is one of
Or
the
too
reasons he
many
gave, or too
trees.
many. And she kept sending him listings for like $4.5 million homes.
If true, that is a crazy disparity in budget. That is $3 million apart. That
Yeah.
is a lot of money, especially if you're spending all of your money on smoothies. We all millennials know if you spend your money on on little healthy
Avocado
treats,
toast.
you can't also buy a house. But this made me kind of stressed because I've looked for homes with Greg, and when you're the person who's always not quite happy with the house and you're like, "Not this one," you start to feel like the problem.
Yeah.
But I'm like, "Why not just look a little bit longer? Maybe the right house is just around the corner where I'm not gonna have to make all of these compromises that I don't like," you know? Like, she didn't like the houses. What, they looked for houses for, like, 1 month? And
No, he's like, she rejected the like 8 houses that I found on
Right.
my Zillow search.
I
Again,
that's
clearly, maybe there were some disagreements about what they could afford. That seems difficult
Again, it just seems like their communication was so bad that they
and
could
also
not talk
minimal.
through. How could they not actually talk through the budget on this to a point where they both understood what the budget was?
Yeah, I have a lot of follow-up questions.
Same. So at a certain point, he starts talking about the golden wedding. Again, he does not mention how they decided to get
No.
married, how they decide to get married on TV, how they decide on the timeline. Just suddenly they're wedding planning, and he's already not happy about it.
He basically says that he wanted to, as I said, give Theresa the experience of having her dream wedding since she didn't get that with her late husband. But he ultimately ended up feeling like he was like an extra or like a guest at his own wedding. And like Theresa was only going to her daughter Jenny to discuss all of the details. He sort of felt like his opinions didn't matter. And as the wedding got closer and closer, he admits that he had a really bad case of cold feet.
Yeah. And which makes sense because, again, it seems like he's miserable in the relationship. They've been planning the wedding just for a very short period of time. They're getting married just a month or so after the show's finale even
It's
aired.
a very short timeline, which is also what struck me when he talks about the fact that he insisted on having a prenup, which that I think that is completely reasonable and
Yeah.
probably wise
This
and
is kind of an
fair.
interesting point because the existence of the prenup is known, but there's a lot of confusion about who asked for the prenup.
Yeah, I think a lot of people thought that Teresa was maybe the one who wanted the prenup or that
Yeah.
Teresa was the one with more money. He
Yeah,
seems
because the
to
narrative
imply
had kind
that
of coalesced, especially after that Hollywood Reporter story, that he was a fraud, he doesn't actually have any money. His eyes, like, lit up when Teresa says that she was, like, a successful, like, stock trader and had this corporate job. This was all a scam to get her money. and then she wanted a prenup. But he claims, and there's no reason I think to disbelieve this,
Yeah.
that he was the one who asked for the prenup, and he thought it would protect them both.
Right. Which I think, again, is completely fair and reasonable. And if anyone is getting married on reality television, I would say they should have a prenup.
Yeah. I
Um,
think a lot of
yeah.
people, like, it's generally if you once you have, like, assets, which not everyone does when they get married, but if
I
you do,
mean,
you
yeah,
probably
like
should.
Adam and I have a prenup that it
Yeah.
was just felt like a point of security and a way to protect everyone. And I think it's like a very reasonable thing to
Yeah.
want to ask for. But because of this very short timeline, like he describes that Theresa kind of dragged her feet on the prenup until right before the wedding, but the timeline is so short. He's like,
Right.
she's had the prenup for 4 days and hasn't
Over
signed
the
it.
holidays.
Yeah, over the
Like,
holidays, and she says that she wanted her attorney to review it, which he's like, "Of course, that's reasonable." But I'm thinking, like, often when you try to get an attorney on the phone to look at it, it takes a few days to even get a phone call. It's Christmas, like, they're not working every day. I was like, it's not
yeah.
surprising that this process, if it started right before Christmas and the wedding is January 4th, like, it is not surprising that the prenup was not signed until right before the wedding.
He spins the whole prenup thing into a big deal, and then it's such a nothing burger because she signs it, and
Right.
it doesn't even seem like she asks for any real alterations. Like, he's like, "Oh, I asked if she wanted her attorney to do it, and she said no," like, she didn't even care, and then, like, but then she didn't sign it right
That's
away.
also just
Like,
how it works, and,
yeah.
like, one person's attorney draws up the initial document, and they are the one who is probably going to pay for the bulk of, like, what it costs to draw up the prenup. Like,
And he wanted the
he
prenup, he
wanted the
suggested it,
prenup.
so
Like, again,
sure.
like, Adam's lawyer did the prenup, and my lawyer looked at the prenup.
Right. This is
Like,
all
that's
totally
very
normal.
standard.
And then he's like, she wouldn't sign it for like 4 or 5 days, and then she signed it wrong. She missed a signature as if this was intentional sabotage.
And then she
Okay.
corrected it.
And she corrected it and it was all signed. So I'm like, okay, so it was signed. So why are we acting like she was refusing to sign the prenup? This is all just a big nothing burger to me.
Yeah. But he writes, quote, "I had a stress hangover about getting that prenup signed, which led to the worst case of cold feet. I wondered if it made more sense for us to date a while longer without the pressure of marriage."
Yes.
Correct.
Yes, it
Does
did.
he tell Theresa this? No.
It doesn't seem like they're communicating at all. Like, no wonder you have cold feet. All you're apparently talking to your fiance about is when she's going to sign that prenup, and you missed a signature, you dummy. Like, this is one of the reasons it would be good to have a longer wedding planning period so that you could get the prenup handled without having to feel like you're nagging your partner about it and it's giving you a bad feeling.
Also, maybe they should have tried living in the same place before getting married for a bit
Maybe
of
they should have
time.
done literally anything other than an on-camera wedding, clearly for the money. I'm sorry. Like, why else would you get married in the midst of all of this on camera? But he
Oh,
doesn't address
yeah,
that
no,
at
no,
all.
because the show will pay for the wedding. And guess what?
Yeah.
Weddings are very expensive.
Yeah.
He also writes, which I was very struck by, that he considered walking away the night before and confided in Faith about his doubts at the rehearsal dinner.
Yes. This was interesting. I felt like there was a certain amount of weird wedge creating in the book. Like, it felt like he was kind of leveraging the other golden women against
Mm,
Teresa. And
yeah.
this almost seemed, I saw someone on like Reddit describe this as throwing Faith under the bus. And that phrase keeps popping up for me. Like, he's making it sound like Faith tried to stop the wedding. And these women all know each other. It's a very uncomfortable thing to put it out there that Faith encouraged him to call it off. But basically, he says the night before the wedding, they were at the resort bar and he was trying to celebrate, but he was feeling so much doubt and anxiety. He says, quote, "I guess my distress showed on my face, at least to Faith, who was a guest. She suggested we move away from the group for a bit and ushered me to a far corner of the bar for a conversation. Sitting there, I poured my heart out to her. Going through with this wedding is the wrong thing to do, I said. I wish I wasn't where I am, but I have no way out. I'm completely trapped." Faith poked a finger into my chest and said, "What the hell are you doing? If you know in your heart this isn't right, why are you going forward with it? That isn't you." I do think this is actually good advice,
It is.
regardless of who she's closer with or who she cares more about. I
Because
would not want a man to marry my friend while he was
out of
feeling this way
obligation,
either.
especially when
Yeah.
if he is truly saying, as he writes, I know this wedding is the wrong thing to do.
Yeah.
That is definitive. That isn't, I'm feeling anxious. That's, this is
Yeah.
wrong and I'm going to do it anyway.
He says, "I wish I'd listened to her wise and sincere advice, but my need to please everyone, ingrained in me from childhood, was too strong to release its destructive grip. I could not let down my girls, Teresa's family, the cast who had traveled for the event, and everyone who had worked relentlessly to put on a magical wedding." Also, I'm sorry, it was a TV special. Like, he got himself in, like, the hardest kind of position to extract himself from by agreeing to this wedding.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think I would have the strength to call it off.
Because what would they air? I would just be like, "Oh god, like, the show must go on, and this is the show." He says, "Most of all, I couldn't let down Teresa, whom I still love dearly, even as I worried about the pace of our relationship." It's very hard to understand the nature of his relationship with Teresa at times because he's speaking from a place of, like, immense bitterness and
That's the
judgment,
thing.
but then he'll be like, "Anyway, I loved her so much." And I'm like,
Well,
"You haven't said a single positive thing about her or your relationship during this whole
I
period."
think that's what I struggle with is that obviously there were fundamental incompatibilities in this relationship, but also obviously there were things that he really liked about her because this is a person that he was in a relationship with, agreed to marry, did marry, proposed to. And so you just feel that I don't know, like the complete like lack of generosity given to Teresa at every point almost feels not totally honest. Like, you almost need to
Yeah.
release that anger before you write about the relationship because there's just this veneer of, like, crud over every single moment they shared.
Right, which is him resenting her for how things played out
Right.
on screen after the relationship, and yeah, I was really struck by that. I It reminds me also of, like, how the main character of a rom-com will end up in, like, they have to extract themselves from an engagement or a bad relationship, and it's just so comically bad that you're like, "How were you in this relationship? Like, you truly hate this person, you have no connection with them." And then they'll be like, "But I love him." I'm like, "It's
Do
not in the
you?
text, like, you've given no indication of that." Like, I don't know. After they get married, things quickly fall further apart. Um, there's still long distance, of course,
He also has not seen her home
and she hasn't
somehow.
seen his. It seems like they've really only seen each other during, like, joint trips to LA for media, to New York for wedding planning. Like, their whole relationship is taking place still during these sort of glamorous, charged outings where they are planning a live TV special or doing media together. And now they're
Yeah.
finally gonna, like, see each other's homes.
And Gary writes, I thought this was a little shady. He's like, describes Teresa's tiny two-bedroom house.
That's a Midwestern mentality right there. I'm sorry, space is at a premium out here. You want her to save money by not having a smoothie every day, but you think she should have a big house?
Right.
At a different point, he's dinging her for thinking she should live in the most big, expensive house she possibly can, but now you're upset that her house is too small?
He basically says he felt there was no room for him. And when he went to visit, he ended up sleeping on the couch for 3 nights at Teresa's request. And he brings up the lack of intimacy and the fact that he felt rejected. And he's very careful to be like, I'm not just talking about sex. Like,
Mhm.
intimacy comes in very many forms, but
Also sex.
also sex.
Yeah, I mean, I will say I was kind of thrown by this, and I wanna know more I wanna know more about all of this from Teresa. I hope she writes a book herself, as she, I
Same.
believe, has said she would do if he talked shit about her in this book, which he does. Um, but yeah, if I just got married and my partner was like, "Please sleep on the couch, you'll be in my way because I have work in the morning," I would also be hurt.
Yeah, you might feel rejected. I mean, clearly there is just this immediate disconnect between the two of
Yeah.
them.
And he also says that he doesn't really talk to her about it. And he's like, I guess I should have. This book is littered with these spoken and unspoken moments when he should have said something to her
And
and
he never
didn't.
does.
And that is also how disconnects can keep growing. Like, it's great that he and Toni, I guess, magically stayed in sync without speaking, but most marriages are not like that, even good ones. Like, you
Right.
sometimes have to express what you need and what you're feeling. He was also alarmed to learn that she used her stove top as a vanity because she cooked so infrequently and there's better light by the stove than in the bathroom.
I just felt like he included this to be like, look how shallow she is.
Yeah, basically. But ultimately, he just, like, didn't feel at home in New Jersey during his, like, 1 week that he spent there. He didn't know anyone, and he couldn't find a place to play pickleball last minute. And this is one of those moments where I'm like, this doesn't sound like the easiest week, but you expected Theresa to accept a a lot more discomfort or a similar level of discomfort visiting you or like it being absorbed into your life. There is this sort of sense of like, well, it wasn't easy to be there right away. So I just like couldn't really do that. But that is the kind of compromise that goes into making this marriage work. And he's disappointed when Teresa lets the side down by not investing that back in him in Indiana, but he doesn't really want to do it in New Jersey
No, neither
either.
of them want to.
Yeah. So she also does visit him in Indiana. This goes poorly as well. And he's upset because before it even starts, because she wants to just do it for basically 1 day so that she doesn't miss work. But then he does, for once, express to her that he feels like she's checking a box and he doesn't think she'll actually get to experience Indiana. So she negotiates a week working remotely with her boss so that she can stay for longer. However, then she gets there and she expresses that where he lives is so isolated, she could never see herself living there. And he brings her to meet his friends at the Shady Nook, like this watering hole where he and his like pickleball friends and so forth hang out. And he tells this completely bizarre anecdote that I have to read in
Oh
full.
my God, you do.
To poke fun at Teresa's assumptions about Indiana natives, I'd asked my friends to lean into the bumpkin stereotype by wearing flannel shirts and seed caps. So when she walked into the bar and grill, there were 14 close friends in trucker caps and flannel shirts waiting to give her a hug. One of the men went the extra mile and wore muddy boots. But the joke was completely lost on Teresa. Either she truly thought that was how we dressed all the time, or she didn't even notice. In her white blouse that stood out amongst all the plaid, she greeted everyone as if nothing was strange. But these weren't farmers, and even if they were, farmers also change when they're going to a party. A lot of these people who had worked in finance and industry were multimillionaires. Not that it should matter. The upshot was that my gag fell flat.
I'm like, did you tell her it was a gag?
I don't know what outcome he wanted from this.
He wanted her to be like
A bizarre
disgusted by all the plaid.
This is such a bizarre thing to do. First of all, what Teresa is doing here is she's in an unusual social setting for her, and she is trying to be completely and meticulously polite. She is
Right.
like, she's not going to be like,
What
why
are you
all in
wearing?
boots? She's not going to make fun of what they're wearing. She's not going to laugh at what they're wearing. What if she's wrong? And people actually do wear flannel shirts and boots to hang out in this particular place. She's going to look like such an asshole. You've described her being absolutely as polite as she can be, as if it's a bad thing. Like, you are not the one who comes off well in this anecdote, believe it or not.
I'm like,
Teresa
I'm
comes off
sorry.
better than you.
If you wanted her to know this was a joke, you needed to be like, we dressed up in the Indiana stereotype for you. Ha ha ha.
Right, like, first of
Like,
all, the whole joke is at her expense, first of all.
Also correct.
You're
Like,
such a
it's very
snooty
bizarre.
You're a snooty East Coast lady. My friends all think you're so rigid and uptight. You don't understand Indiana. So we're all going to make fun of you. She handles it as gracefully as she possibly can, not
Well, that's
understanding that they're
wrong
trying to
too.
make fun of her. That's wrong too. She should have laughed at them, I guess.
And proved that she was an asshole from the East Coast.
Or she should have been like, "Oh, you got me. Like, you think that I think that everyone here wears trucker hats, but I know that's not true because you're all multimillionaires. And
Not
even
that that
farmers change
matters.
their shirts." What are you talking about, dude? Like, what made you think this was a good idea? This was mean to your fiance. It was mean to people who wear flannel shirts to bars, which, sorry, I've done that. Like,
I mean, yeah.
every part of
What?
this is so bizarre. I
And he's like, and she wore white.
and she wore white. So she really stood out. But she was polite to everyone, like an asshole.
He also brings up that weird rumor that's circulated on the
Rumor.
rumor, quote unquote, that circulated on the Almost Famous podcast that was so specific about like an exchange that Gary and Theresa had suggesting, where Theresa suggesting that like farmland should be developed and how offended Gary was. And it is extremely clear that he fed this anecdote, maybe by way of like Susan and Kathy, to Ben Higgins.
Right, which is, I'm sorry, he later will be so aggrieved that Teresa did not proactively stick up for him after the divorce. He's basically tacitly admitting that he spread a really, like, a story that kind of makes it seem like she is the snooty, hoity-toity East
Well,
Coast
that is what
asshole in
he
the
thinks.
relationship, and that's why it couldn't work out. Right, but, like, this is to spread this rumor intentionally to make her look like the problem in the relationship, and then to be like, "She didn't defend me enough in the media," is ridiculous.
So he writes, I remembered that during the drive to my house from the airport, struck by the miles and miles of farmland rolling by her, she'd suggested that it should be developed with condos, shopping malls, and industrial parks. It just seems like such a waste of all this space, she said. I was flabbergasted at the notion that anyone would want to destroy such nourishing beauty. Teresa, these farmers would rather sell one of their children than sell these farms, which
What?
in some cases have been in their families for over 100 years, I said. I was being a bit hyperbolic, but I couldn't believe her reaction to the sight of agricultural land was to want it raised for more Starbucks and Lululemon storefronts. I'm like, first of all, did she say that they should put in Lululemons on the
Clearly.
farmland?
He also tells a story where she makes him change from a plaid shirt to, like, Lululemon for a nice dinner, like, Lululemon sells fancier clothes in some way. It's like athleisure. I don't he's like, "She loves Lululemon too much." Also, he's like, "Teresa, please respect these farmers. They would love to sell their children into slavery, but they would not love to sell this farm to make a Lululemon. That would be wrong." What kind of person would love their child more than a farm? Is that the kind of person you are? You wanna take your kid to Starbucks? This farmer wants to take his
I
kid to someone else, and
I'm
then
just
he
like,
wants to
it
keep his
seems like an
farm.
offhand comment that she made.
I mean,
Like,
it does
oh,
seem like a
it's
bizarre
out
thing to say
it is a little
because
out of touch.
people do need to eat. Like, the farms are not there for aesthetic purposes. They're actually there to make food and fuel, of various kinds. Um,
No, we
Also,
need farms,
I'm
to be
sorry,
clear.
I've driven through a lot of Indiana farmland, okay? I lived in South Bend. It is at the top of the state. My grandma lived in Kentucky, which is below Indiana, right? It's just south of the border. I used to drive that entire 6-hour, like, drive down through the state a couple times a year, and it is the flattest expanse of cornfields and soy fields. I can't imagine looking at it and being like,
This is the
This is
beauty.
this is the height of natural beauty that the world has to offer. But we do need food, so no, we can't raise all of it and just create endless blankets of
Strip
industrial
malls.
parks and strip malls across the country. I don't know. This is just such a weird story, and
It's
like the f-
I'm sure that the actual exchange was somewhere in like in between. Like I can't imagine it was so specific. Like why are there not more Starbucks over these cornfields?
I know it's very bizarre from every angle, and like apologies to anyone who loves the vistas of Indiana, but I can relate, even as a native Hoosier, to not finding it so beautiful that it needs to be kept in its current form, just for the beauty. But that's fine. Like, she just doesn't like Indiana, and
They
I
just
think
aren't compatible. I'm gonna say this
yeah.
1,000 times.
It sounds
They
like
are
this
not
was
compatible. They don't like the same
mhm,
things. They don't like each other's homes. They don't have great conversation. He wants to travel. She doesn't want to stop working. Like,
yeah.
they are not compatible.
It sounds to me more like she was like, "There isn't that much of the stuff I like out here. It seems like there's space for there to be more of some of that stuff out here." And he was like, "How dare you? Every inch of this land is a farm that has been passed down through many generations and that is worth more to these people than their own children. And it's so beautiful." But he has framed it in this specific way, and now we've heard it in multiple
Yeah.
places. He's
That
really
this is like a
determined.
hate crime against farmers.
Exactly. So things don't go smoothly, and it seems like this is kind of the
This
end of
is
the
the
line.
end. The next time they see each other, which is at Joey's after the final rose filming, they mutually agree to part ways. It actually seems quite amicable.
Yeah, it's one of those breakups where he's like, "Should we break up?" And she's like, "I was gonna say the same thing."
Yeah, and he says like there's like a freedom sort of that they experience in this moment and that they almost can like enjoy each other more because
Yeah.
it's just out there.
So they make the announcement about 2.5 weeks later on Good Morning America in an interview with Juju Chang. As we all know, we were there. And he says that initially the split was amicable. Um, but he also says that he felt bitter resentment toward Teresa and the show for months afterward. It
Well,
says for
that's
months afterward,
obvious.
like it's ended. He's like, for a while, I felt bitter resentment, buddy.
Seems like it's still there.
And he really blames her, as I said before, for not defending him when the media backlash kind of kicked in. He says, quote, as early as March 26th, while still in LA, this is like around the time that they broke up, Teresa and I had vowed to protect each other against the faceless haters on social media. In that private conversation and others to follow, we said we would proactively protect each other, that no matter what, each of us would make sure the other did not suffer through any attacks alone. But then he says he soon came to feel like he was alone in it because after the GMA interview, quote, Teresa issued a statement defending herself, which resulted in a narrative in which she was a victim. Although I refused to defend myself publicly, she could have stepped in to correct some of the more egregious lies. She could have stated that I was financially stable and our split was mutual. She could have gone on any of the numerous platforms available to her to remind people that I had been candid about my dating history on Live with Kelly and Mark, but she didn't do any of that. So he wants her to like issue point by point rebuttals of
Right.
these claims.
And it seems like what he's referring to. I mean, I'm not sure if this is the statement he's referring to, but she did go on Ben and Ashley's podcast, Almost Famous, and was asked if distance was really the reason behind their split. And she said, "You really can't know somebody in 4 weeks. I'll just say that." Then she says, "I don't want to say any more than that," but it concedes that it was not just the location thing.
She did issue a statement on Instagram shortly after this interview.
Okay.
That's probably what he's referring to. Um, that like it wasn't a joint statement.
What did it say? I
But
don't remember
it's
this.
and it's kind of on the long side, but, she thanks everyone who has expressed love, support, and kindness to her. She says it means the world to her that they took time to reach out. For anyone who is confused and angry and does not understand, please try to find it in your heart to understand and try a little kindness, not just for me, but for the world and everyone you encounter. It was one of the most incredible experiences of my life, something I never expected to happen at this point in my life, and I truly thought it was going to last forever. It turns out, even at the age of 70, you don't know everything. Sometimes things don't go the way you planned, and that's okay. I take so many positives away from this experience, most importantly and above all, the incredible friends I now have and all these amazing, wonderful women, and in Angie and Jenny, Peyton and Charlie, the producers, the production crew, and so many of you. I ask you to please stay open to all the experiences, opportunities, and love that may come your way. Keep smiling, keep laughing. I will. I love you all. So
Doesn't seem to imply anything negative about Gary.
I feel like the reason, if there was any sort of victim narrative around her, which I don't remember, what I remember is people being kind of mad at both of them. Like, they conned us, they took the money to get the big wedding in, but they never even tried. Insofar as there was any victim narrative, it probably was more rooted in the fact that that Hollywood Reporter article made it seem
Yeah.
like he was a serial con artist. Like, I don't
Right.
think it had anything to do with this statement.
No, and I don't really think that there was anything Teresa could have done, and they weren't speaking at that point.
Right.
Like,
Like,
I just
she could have had a line in there that's like, "I will always care for Gary, like, please be kind to him as well," which would
yes.
not have been amiss, but I can't find it in me to find this statement problematic. It's they're no longer together, she's focused on herself, she says nothing negative about him and implies nothing negative about him to my eye.
Also,
It didn't work out.
I had forgotten that she did end up responding directly to the farmer anecdote. Where and her version of it is, so we're driving from the airport and it was like 3 hours. We're getting closer to Gary's house. I see this open land. I don't see crops. I just think it's flat land. And I go, "Oh wow, you could build townhomes there." That's all I said. And Gary said, "Oh, so you want to take the farmer's land away from him?" I go, "Note to self, don't say that again."
Like, I'm sorry. She how do you know that she knows it's farms? Like, I whatever. I think that this reaction to her statement is over the top, overly wounded, and apparently that makes him feel like he no longer has any obligation toward her. But then he writes a little bit about his cancer diagnosis and treatment. It's not a huge focus of the book. It seems like it's a slow growing cancer, and they're hopeful that with treatment, he'll end with like kind of changing his diet. He'll continue to do well for a while.
Yeah.
But it
Which
seems
is
like,
great to hear. But
yeah,
I think we assumed that maybe this had something to do with their split, with his split with
I think a
Theresa.
lot of people had made that connection. It doesn't seem like it was a factor in the divorce. It seemed like
No,
it's happened well
right
after the
after. It seems
relationship
like
had
basically
broken down.
a few weeks after they had ended things, he got this diagnosis. And he says he did call her. He also sort of expresses frustration that she wasn't then like
Checking in
checking
on
in on
him.
him all the time.
And he compares this to other women from the Golden franchise who were checking in on him. And I will just say that he was not going through a divorce with any of those women at the time. Like, if he frames this as sort of like, oh, I'm nothing to this woman that I was married to. Like, she cares less than all these other women. But her position is just different. Like, she's going through a breakup from him. Too would think that maybe it's not my place to be an involved source of support. Whereas a new friend like Susan or Kathy might
R-
feel like they are a good person to be that source of support. Like, I actually think it makes a lot of sense that friends he made from the show reached out more than Theresa when they're
I
going through
agree.
this like really huge, painful public divorce. She's still working full time. Like, their relationship broke down. I can fully understand why she would be focusing on herself, whereas other friends from the franchise might have the distance actually to offer him more support and check-ins. I just feel like this is just one of many things where so much is read into her doing or not doing things that to me it seems like probably have very innocent and understandable explanations. Like, why is the woman he's divorcing obligated to check in on him every week about his cancer treatment?
Yeah, I agree.
I don't know. Um,
So that kind of brings us to the end of the Theresa stuff.
yeah, he still seems very angry, and I am just really dying for her take. I just want a point by point on
Me
this or
too.
a book of her own.
I also just have to say that the one time I did meet Theresa in a social setting, she could have said any number of bad things about Gary, and she did not say one single word negative about him.
Right? She could have told you a rumor to share on your podcast
Right.
about him,
Like,
but she
and like
didn't.
literally nothing, only had the nicest things to say about him. She clearly, my read is that she has been trying to like not speak about the specifics of the breakdown of their relationship publicly.
Yeah.
Now the
And
floodgates are open and
now
she would
she's
have
gonna
every
have
right.
to.
Yeah.
Honestly, like, I don't think that I could let this stand if I were her without a response. And I think a lot of what he says is like drenched with this contempt and anger and judgment, which, I can understand where that might come from after a unexpectedly fast divorce. But a lot of it seems to me like stuff that could look very different coming from a different perspective.
Yeah,
And she's
I
gonna have to
agree.
offer that, or this is gonna become the dominant narrative. Um, so let's talk a little bit about the post Theresa era. I was kind of, as I read, I was kind of wondering, like, at any point did he consider trying to get with Leslie again? Like, at points, it kind of seems
It
like he's still
seems
carrying a torch.
it seems like it at least crossed his mind in the same way that it crossed his mind with Joan. I think he
Yeah.
has an overwhelming feeling of like maybe it would have turned out different if I had chosen one of these other women who I now have this like really positive feeling about. He writes about Leslie that she has a heart as big as the state of Minnesota. Says the warmth and empathy may come from her Jewish roots, but no matter the origin, I'm busting with pride to call her a friend.
This is such a funny she's like, "Sure, yes, the warmth and empathy, that probably comes from her Jewish roots." What?
I'm glad you like the Jews, Gary.
No, they're wonderful.
Yeah. And he writes about like her intentions for being on the show. And he writes, Leslie was one of the true participants of the show. She was there to find love. She was there to find her forever partner. Since the day I told her she was not going to be my final pick, the nagging what if thoughts have never gone away.
Yeah, he says, "Although I hate to admit it, every time I think about Leslie, I still get emotional."
And then he describes seeing Leslie at like a filming of Celebrity Family Feud
I
and like
remember when this happened.
still feeling a spark. And he says, he talks a lot about how they bonded over their shared sense of humor, and that's something that he really loved about her. And at Celebrity Family Feud, he says, afterward, we were standing only a few feet apart when I whispered to her, "It's really hard," meaning the show we had just finished. Even though her eyes showed she still harbored pain from the events of the show, she gave me a mischievous smile and laughed. "You still got it for me?" As she walked away from me towards the stage, I stood there puzzled by her meaning. Then the double entendre hit me like a lightning bolt, and I laughed out loud, drawing stares from the crew. Whether we wanted to admit it or not, Leslie and I still had an unquestionable connection.
That's so Leslie. I love that.
I know. I was like, yeah, she's like fucking needling you.
Also, so I guess this was actually between when he and Teresa split and when they announced it on
Oh,
Good Morning
yeah.
America. Um, but it seems like he didn't pursue things. And ultimately, it seems like maybe the, lifestyle differences that he was worried about were still maybe indicating to him that she wasn't the right person for him, but those feelings seem like they stuck
Lingered.
around. Yeah.
Yeah. Also, of course, Leslie is on very good terms with Gary. She's also on very good terms and very close with Teresa. Like,
Yeah.
I think that ship has sailed.
Right. Well, and he talks about how he and Leslie are such good friends now, um, and also a lot of the women on the show. Um,
Basically all of them except Teresa,
but
he
he
makes it
really
seem like.
eviscerates Teresa, and Teresa, from what I can tell, is not a social island. Like, she does have friends from the show. So I wonder how publishing this is actually maybe going to shake up some of these friendships that he brags about in the book.
Yeah, I guess we shall see.
He also, like, he even at various points does talk about how some of the women talked badly about Teresa to him. He never actually says that Teresa said anything bad about any of the other women, which I think is interesting. Like, we know it would
Yeah.
have been in there if she had. He points out that during the one night that they had post engagement at the resort, when they ate all the room service, he was happy to hear her like only saying nice things about the other women. It never seems like that ended up changing. So it's interesting that, like, she is framed as this sort of person who betrayed everyone and was a manipulator. He says some of the other women on the show felt betrayed as well, but, like, what did she do? It doesn't even sound like she ever said anything unkind about any of them.
No, she like talked too much about her connection with Gary on the show.
Yeah. And then he picked her. Like, she did not make him pick her. Like, this was, I'm sorry, an unforced error by Gary.
But of course, Gary is now engaged to a woman
Yes.
who is not in this book. Lana Sutton, a retired teacher who is in her mid-50s, according to TMZ, and who slid into Gerry's DMs twice.
Yeah. And I think she's sort of got his attention by saying that she grew up in an Indiana town near him or something. So it seems like they have that more compatible background and lifestyle, that
She's retired.
Midwest lifestyle. She's retired. Um, and he hard launched their relationship in April of this year and announced their engagement on October 3rd. So it seems like they have been together less than a year. It's quite plausible that the book was completely finished before they even met, but it does make it a little odd that the book doesn't acknowledge her.
Yeah, again, if I was the publisher, I would have tried everything in my power, and maybe they did, to get like a little addendum added,
Yeah,
because this is a pretty big change.
right. And
Also, really puts things into perspective about the fact that he repeatedly makes a big deal in the book about how he preferred dating women his own age and wrote Faith off because of their age difference, which is a little over 10 years. He doesn't seem that concerned about what will happen when he's 80 with Lana, who is 20 years younger than him.
right, he's going to be 80 in like 5, 6 years, and she's going to be what, maybe
60?
60-ish, and is she still gonna be mongering fun? Like, is he gonna be slowing her down? Not a concern anymore. I would have loved to see some acknowledgement of how his thinking on that had shifted,
I
given
agree.
that throughout the book, he's kind of being like, "Look at me. I'm the guy who loves women exactly my age." He says at one point, "The stereotype is that men prefer younger women. Well, not this man. I want to be with someone I can relate to, particularly as I get older. When I see young women, I think of my daughters, not dates." Okay.
And again,
How has that changed for you now that your fiance is 20 years younger than
I
you?
will leave open to the fact that maybe you just have like an insane compatibility with this particular woman who's 20 years younger than you. Sure.
Yeah, this woman is maybe just a few years older than his older daughter. Like, it's fine. They're all adults, but he doesn't really acknowledge how his thinking has shifted on this in the book. And it seems like he wants to get the goodwill, to me, of being like, I'm that rare older guy who actually appreciates women my own age. It doesn't hit quite as hard now. But yeah, so he's happy now. He has moved on to the next chapter of his life, and he just had to get this last bit of like anger and bile out into the world. Emma, do you have any final thoughts on the golden years before we wrap up?
No, I mean, I still think that Gerry was a far superior lead to Mel, and
Mhm.
I hope that his bitterness towards Theresa can now dissipate and be let go of. Now that he has moved on, he's put this book out, he has a fiance. Like, maybe you two just were not meant to be married.
Yeah.
Neither of you are necessarily like bad people. Just go on your separate paths.
Did you hear that she said that Indiana was isolated? What a good person
How
to say
dare.
that. Yeah, I hope so too. I agree, and I think that the fact that there's already been a fair amount of buzz about the stuff in this book is an indication of how superior of a lead he actually kind of was. Like, can you imagine caring about a memoir written by Mel
What would he
in
have
2
to say?
years? It's hard to
At
imagine.
least Gerry can describe his emotions, even if a lot of those emotions are just like bitterness.
Yeah, and I just wanna hear what Theresa has to say. I just
Me
wanna
too.
hear.
Teresa, come on the pod. You're
Write a
always
book.
welcome. Write a book. We'll talk about it. And I just wish, as always, everyone good health and good fortune who was on the first season of this show, because it really was magic in a bottle.
It was. And on that note, that's it for this episode of Love to See It with Emma and Claire.
Love to See It is a presentation of Odyssey. The show is produced by us, Claire Fallon, and Emma Gray. This episode was edited by John Bahar. Our production assistant is Tatiana Knee-Smith, who also edits our YouTube videos. Our theme music is by Tamar Haviv, and our art is by Aaron Nestor.
If you like the show, please follow us, rate us 5 stars, and leave a review. And of course, tell all your friends about our show, maybe by writing a long memoir about all the things you resent about us.
If you're watching this on YouTube, remember to like and subscribe to our channel so you never miss an episode.
If you want to get in touch, you can email us at claireandemmapod@gmail.com.
You can also find us on TikTok at Love to See It Pod and on Instagram at Claire and Emma Pod. And you can find our newsletter Rich Text on Substack at claireandemma.substack.com. I'm also on Blue Sky at Emma Gray and on Instagram at EmmaLadyRose.
And I'm at Claire E. Fallon. Special thanks to the team at Odyssey, Eric Donnelly, Kate Rose, Moira Curran, Melissa Wester, and Hillary Shupf.
We'll be back later this week with a Golden Bachelor recap.
Can you keep